Hello, this is Mrs. Sturgeon here to talk to you about how to convert from point slope form and from standard form into slope intercept. So the reason you might want to do something like this is if, say, so in this table, I'll kind of zoom out and show you the whole table. In this table, they're asking you to find a bunch of information here. You are taking an equation, you're finding the slope, you're finding the point, and you're finding the y-intercept. Now, because of the fact that this first equation I'm looking at is in point slope form, I know that I can immediately find the point and the slope. How do I do that? Well, the slope is always the number in front of the parentheses. So for my first equation, it would be -4. Okay, and my point comes from where the x is located and where the y is located. Remember to take the opposite sign from the one that you see. So if you see a plus sign, that means it's going to be a -x. If you see a minus sign, so next to my y I see a minus sign, that means it'll be a +6 for my point. And again, remember, anytime you're labeling a point, x comes first and then y. Okay, so that's why I started with the +2 first, and then I jumped over to the -6. Okay, so great. I identified the point, I identified the slope, but now they're asking me for the y-intercept. How do you find a y-intercept when you're starting in point slope? Well, what we're going to do is convert the equation over to slope-intercept form. So if you don't remember what slope-intercept form looks like, I'll write it up top here. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I want my equation to say y equals mx plus b. One thing to notice is that when I write y equals mx plus b, right, there's no parentheses there anymore, and there's no number on the side of the equal sign that has the y. There's no number there anymore, right? So essentially, I need to make it so that point slope no longer has parentheses and no longer has a number associated with the y. So how do I do that? To get rid of these parentheses, let's use distributive property. Just like if I were solving an equation, I would distribute first. Anytime I see parentheses, I distribute it out. So if I distribute, I get -4 times x is just -4x, and then -4 times 2 is a -8. Okay, so distributing is the same thing as multiplication. So I'm going to bring everything else down, y minus 6 and my equal sign. Now remember, before I said, okay, there's no parentheses when I write slope-intercept form. There's also nothing on the side of the equal sign that has the y. So this -6 gotta go. So in order to bring the -6 to the other side of the equal sign, let's do our inverse operations. Let's do some algebra. So because of the fact that it's -6, we're going to add 6 to both sides. I'm writing it underneath the number because that's the like term. Okay, -6 plus 6, those cancel out. That would just be 0. You get y equals -4x. There were no like terms to combine with x, so I just bring it down as is. -8 plus 6 is a -2. So now that I'm in slope-intercept form, I can easily identify that the y-intercept is -2. Let's do one more example where you have to convert point slope form over to slope-intercept, and then we'll talk about standard form as well. So again, we don't want these parentheses here, so to get rid of them, we'll do distributive property. So distribute 1/5 to both the x and the -10. So bring down y minus 2, we're not changing anything on that side yet. 1/5 distributed to x, multiplied together, we'll get 1/5 x. And then 1/5 multiplied by a -10. Okay, I can do some math over here. -10 times 1/5. That's basically the same thing as 10/5, which is just -2 in this case. So I'll write -2. Right, so now only thing left to do is make sure the y is by itself. Let's add 2 to both sides because this is subtraction. We want to do the opposite. So let's add 2. And I'm left with, on this side, -2 plus 2 cancels out. You get y equals 1/5 x. -2 plus 2 also cancels out, so I'm actually just left with 0. If you want to write plus 0, if you just want to leave it blank, that's totally acceptable. Okay, what if I want to get y by itself when I'm in standard form? So the y is right here. I wrote y equals mx plus b because that's where we're headed. Okay, the y is right here. Let's go ahead and bring this 4x term to the other side of the equal sign. So because it's positive, I'll subtract. So let's go minus 4x from both sides. Now 4x minus 4x cancels out. I'm crossing it out. Now notice the minus sign in front of 5y still there. So let's bring it down. You get negative 5y equals. Now if I want to write 10 minus 4x, that's totally fine. Or I can flip it around and say negative 4x plus 10 because of the fact that this is a positive 10. Okay, now last step, all I have to do, negative 5 is in front of y. That means they're being multiplied. To undo that multiplication, let's go ahead and divide every single term by negative 5. On the left, negative 5 divided by negative 5 cancels out to just get 1. So you get 1y, or just y, equals a negative divided by a negative. Well, you can't really divide 4 by 5 without getting a decimal or a fraction. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I'm just going to write it as positive 4/5 x. And then 10 divided by negative 5 is a negative 2. So I'll write minus 2. You could also write plus negative 2. That's totally fine. But to make it a little simpler, I just like to write minus 2. And that's how you convert to slope-intercept form.